Tonight, top story live again from Ukraine, where the humanitarian crisis and Russia's aggression are growing. A dash cam capturing a round of Russian strikes north of Kyiv. Dozens of civilians killed. Other neighborhoods leading to the capital city obliterated as Russian troops close in. A key port city now under Putin's control. Both sides agreeing to safe spaces for civilians and aid. But is Putin likely to keep up his side of the bargain? Ticket to escape. More than 1 million refugees have now fled Ukraine, many by train. I speak with the head of the rail system in Ukraine, the lifeline for refugees, the pressure he's under to get his fellow citizens out alive. Did you ever think that your job would be saving people, literally taking people out of war zones?
Never.
And what he said about the increasing danger as Russian missiles hit tracks and rail bridges. Also, former officer Brett Hankison found not guilty for his actions during a botched police raid that led to the death of Breonna Taylor. The reaction tonight from people on both sides of the case. New allegations against former President Trump. The January 6th committee now saying he committed crimes while trying to overturn the 2020 election. And the exclusive interview with former Trump Attorney General William Barr. What he told our Lester Holt about the moment he told Trump Biden won the election fair and square. Plus, the 12-year-old boy fatally shot in the back by police in Philadelphia. Police say the child fired multiple rounds at officers. The investigation just launched. An apartment inferno, the moment an apartment building exploded in Maryland. Crews searching the area for survivors. Top story starts right now. And good evening. Top story is live from Ukraine again tonight as Russia is intensifying its assault from the air and the ground. Dashcam footage showing a barrage of rockets hitting a residential neighborhood just north of Kyiv. Dozens of people killed. And this eerie drone footage shows the complete devastation of a town on the outskirts of the capital city. Entire streets leveled, some buildings still burning. Hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians now escaping the country every day. The CEO of Ukraine's rail system telling me they will run trains until everyone who wants to leave can. And tonight, the U.S. just announced it will give temporary protected status to Ukrainian refugees. Those who have stayed are not backing down. Video shows one woman getting in the face of a Russian soldier, calling them a fascist. But despite crippling sanctions and fierce resistance from Ukraine, Putin today saying his operation is going according to plan. Both sides have agreed to humanitarian corridors in Ukraine to protect civilians and aid, but the world is watching to see if Russia follows through with that. Richard Engel leads us off from Kyiv.
Russian President Vladimir Putin's war machine is now carving a path of destruction more than a week after his unprovoked assault on Ukraine began. Russian forces today captured their first major city, the mayor of Kherson saying Russian troops are now in control there, with 5 other cities surrounded by the Russians, including Chernihiv, which is being pounded. The capital, Kiev, remains in the eye of the storm. That huge Russian convoy still 15 miles out. Today we were among a small group of journalists meeting Ukrainian President Zelensky. He arrived without a large entourage, carrying his own chair. He said he's willing to negotiate with Russia, but not over Ukraine's sovereignty, and that it all depends on one man.
Vladimir Putin has so far not been willing to meet with him. Do you have a message for him now that Ukrainian cities are under attack? This city is under attack. A convoy is on its way here. Is there a way to prevent this war from escalating even further now?
It's not about I want to talk with Putin. I think I have to talk with Putin. The world has to talk with Putin because there are no other ways to stop this war. That's why I have to.
As he spoke, French President Macron had what his office described as a disturbing call with Putin today. Putin insisting Russia was not targeting civilians and ominously saying he would pursue his military operation until the end. But Russia is hitting civilians. In Kharkiv, this activist was live streaming, thanking supporters for donations when... And in Mariupol, a father cried, holding the body of his teenage son. As a U.S. military official predicts, the most violent phase of this war has yet to even begin.
Tom, despite all the stress that he's under, the war, the lack of sleep, President Zelensky today appeared calm and relaxed. Asked if he is afraid he'll be killed, he said yes, that only a disturbed person wouldn't fear for his own life. Asked if he will stay in this city, he also said without hesitation, yes. Tom?
Richard Engel leading us off tonight on Top Story with more on his exchange with President Zelensky. As the violence continues to escalate, more than 1 million of Zelensky's citizens have now fled Ukraine. The numbers are only growing as the journey towards the border becomes more perilous.
Tonight in Ukraine, the lifeline for refugees runs around the clock on these tracks through the country and through a war.
Train is a key to escape for people.
Inside rail cars, families are packed tight, not sure what the next stop will bring.
It was very hard to get inside and to spend 10 hours and a half because it was too full, very full, a lot of people, with young children, with animals.
And the journey is growing more dangerous. These new images showing rail bridges blown up, tracks crippled, even a missile just steps from the rail lines. And tonight, at a second round of talks between Russia and Ukraine, both sides agreeing to create humanitarian corridors to evacuate citizens. The crush to board trains still happening, and train windows are telling the story of this war. Pain, loss, and so many families saying goodbye. Kharkiv resident Irene Orlova says she was lucky to get a seat on a train out, but now that she's stopped moving, the reality is setting in.
I am adoring my city. For me, it's best city. So beautiful, with a lot of parks and cinema and theater. And now everything broke. It's crazy. There is everything broke. Everything.
On those humanitarian corridors that they were negotiating, the details are still being worked out, but they are envisioning a potential ceasefire zone to allow for the evacuation of civilians, but also a pathway where food and medicine can get through. Meanwhile, the U.S. just announced it will give temporary protected status to Ukrainian refugees. And as you just saw there in that report, the trains are so critical. They're a critical artery in and out of this country. Earlier today, I spoke with the man in charge of the entire Ukrainian rail system, Alexander Kamishin. Did you ever think when you became head of this company, did you ever think that your job would be saving people, literally taking people out of war zones?
Never. I'm more construction and development guy, but now I'm saving people, repairing infrastructure, and trying to help our militaries to fight the army of Russians back.
Alexander, what is it like to see your train cars filled with families, with women and children and babies, and train cars that should be filled with 4 people are filled with 12 to 15 people? What's that been like?
That gives pain, but that gives happiness because we let these people flee the bombing cities. And as of yesterday evening, we got 928,000 people whom we helped to flee from central, eastern, and southern cities to west. And as of tonight, as we're talking with you, it's over 1 million of people.
Do you think the Russians are trying to hit your trains?
I've seen the bombs, which are about 2 meters from the track. And our people are courageous enough to take these bombs out and let the train go. But meanwhile, thanks God, the trains are not hit. And that's thanks God, I would say.
Are you asking for a humanitarian zone, a green zone, so your trains can run in and out without the fear of being hit by missiles or bombs?
Definitely, that's what we asked, and that's what was agreed as of the negotiations round 2 today, the humanitarian corridors. That's what we actually urgently need, because we got cities which are cut from the other part of Ukraine, and we can't bring water, medicals, and food to these cities. And on the humanitarian corridor, humanitarian train can help these people.
Alexander, we have been at the train station here in Lviv day after day, night after night. We have seen the images of the children in the train car windows. They are incredibly moving. They are hard to see. You see children crying. You see little girls with their hands on the window waving, some children waving the peace sign. Have you seen those images, and what does that mean to you?
I see these images daily, And even now, I've been passing the train station, and I have seen 2 kids standing on the in the night, standing outside. I got those kids, brought them to the office, and they spent at least some hours in the office waiting for the train. And we deal with it daily, and that's what gives me pain. Understanding that all these kids, all these ladies, all these men around the country are trying to flee the home because of these people which came to our country and tried to fight us.
And then what would you tell all the Ukrainians who are trying to get out, who can't find a spot on the train right now?
I wouldn't tell anything to these people. I know that they have to run when the cities are bombed. I hope the war will stop soon, and I hope all of them will get back.
Can you promise them that you will try to get them out? No matter what, you will keep the trains running?
We will run the trains until the last person we can evacuate from center, east, and west of Ukraine and south of Ukraine.
Alexander, thank you so much for your time. You really are doing something incredible here. Without your trains, I don't know how all these refugees would get out. It is truly a lifeline for this entire country. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your service.
You know, in the peaceful world, we are the backbone of economy. In the wartime, we're the backbone of security. And that's what we have to do. That's our job.
Kamishin also told me his railway conductors and engineers have been working around the clock to get as many families out as possible. His message to the Russians: you can't stop the trains in Ukraine. We continue our coverage now. Next tonight, it's the first Ukrainian city to be captured by Russian forces, Kherson, Ukraine, but the citizens there remaining defiant against the Russian invaders. Our Erin Mclaughlin takes a look, inside the harrowing reality of the city's occupation and speaks to those fearful about their loved ones now trapped behind enemy lines.
Life in Kherson, Ukraine, the first city to fall in Putin's war. Russian soldiers patrol the streets. Residents are terrified.
Today, when I woke up with the loud bangs outside, and there are people running on the street, it was horrifying.
2 days ago, the Russian military invaded this port city of almost 300,000, soon overwhelming Ukrainian forces, according to the mayor. Still, the people defiant. This woman going toe-to-toe with the Russian soldier. The city's new rules posted on the mayor's Facebook. A strict curfew in place and a maximum of 2 people allowed on the streets together at any time. Citizens must stop when commanded. Today was the first day many residents felt safe enough to leave their homes. Desperate for food and money, still unease. And more than 500 miles away in Lviv, Dennis phones his mom. She's trapped in Kherson with no way out.
My mother was supporting the Ukrainian army. Then probably she'll go at least to jail.
You're worried your mom's going to end up in jail?
Yes.
Back in Kherson, fearing reprisal, this man only wants to be known as Jimmy.
We probably lost our town to the enemy, but majority thinks it's a temporary, and we have to hold on until the Ukrainian army frees us.
Tonight in Ukraine, wishful thinking that history won't repeat itself.
Erin Mclaughlin joins us again tonight here on Top Story. Erin, watching that report, it's just devastating what these people are going through. Talking to family members in a town now occupied, is there any sense that they're going to try and get them out, and is that even possible?
Well, the residents that I've been speaking to say they have absolutely no idea. They're too scared to even try to leave. An exit was not discussed, apparently, between the mayor and the Russian military occupying force. It wasn't listed in that agreement that was posted on Facebook. And the situation is rife with uncertainty. I was just texting a resident just a short while ago, and he said he was hearing explosions and shelling. He doesn't know what's going on, and he doesn't know what to do, Tom.
Yeah, it seems like everything is so uncertain at this moment. We heard there from, all those Ukrainians who are sort of facing this reality of a Russian occupation. From the people that you've been able to talk to and text with and email with, has there been any shift in how confident they are that Ukraine will be able to resist Russian forces?
Well, the residents that I spoke to there in Kherson are hopeful that the Ukrainian military will return and retake the town. But it is an uncertain situation. It's entirely possible that this could remain in Russian hands for days, weeks, months, perhaps even years. And the people that I've been speaking to say they are prepared and bracing for that reality. Meanwhile, their family members who are in other parts of Ukraine are absolutely desperate. I was speaking to that man who his mother is now trapped inside the city, and it was very clear that he's heartbroken. He doesn't know what he's going to do. He said that once he gets his own family across the Polish border, he's going to try and make his way back to save his mother. But according to the terms posted on Facebook, agreed to by the mayor, they're only allowing cars in with food and other supplies. It's a very tenuous situation at this point, Tom.
Erin, thank you. More and more Ukrainian activists are speaking out about the need for additional aid from NATO nations. Joining us now is Ukrainian activist Daria Kalaniak, executive director of the Anti-Corruption Action Center. Earlier this week, we showed you that clip of Daria confronting Prime Minister Boris Johnson over his country's response to the war in Ukraine. Here's a portion from that news conference in Poland.
You're coming to Poland. You're not coming to Kiev, Prime Minister. You're not coming to Lviv because you are afraid. Because NATO is not willing to defend, because NATO is afraid of World War III, but it is already started. And these are Ukrainian children who are there taking the hit. You're talking about more sanctions, Prime Minister. Putin's children are in Netherlands, in Germany, in mansions. Where are all these mansions seized? I don't see that. I see that my family members, that my team members are saying that we are crying. We don't have where to run.
That was Daria there confronting Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Daria, first off, thank you for joining Top Story. I know this is an incredibly difficult time for you and your fellow countrymen. Talk to me about that moment and why you felt compelled to confront Prime Minister Johnson.
Well, at that moment, I was just in constant contact with my team members, with my friends, and who were actually literally saying to me that, listen, we are in the bomb shelter. I have to evacuate my kid. I don't know how to do that because there are Russian troops going, and I'm afraid that I will be shot. And it's the reality where, millions and millions of Ukrainians live. And I understood, that I simply didn't have a chance not to say anything. So I took a microphone, I stood up, and I told to Boris Johnson everything those other millions of Ukrainians think, feel, but are not able to tell him.
Do you think your work as an anti-corruption activist and someone who fought against Putin, do you think you would have been a target? Is that one of the reasons why you got out?
Absolutely. I bet I'm in the assassination list for Vladimir Putin. What's the plan of Putin? And it was announced by Western intelligence, that he wants to surrender key Ukrainian cities and then simply eliminate those people who will be fighting from inside, starting from those people who are building reforms in Ukraine, particularly anti-corruption reforms, which he hates. And I understood that I'm likely in that list because even before the war, we started the campaign targeting Putin wallets on the West, so challenging the regime of Putin. So I'm now here in Warsaw with my children, and I'm here now kind of continuing fighting corruption, but not in Ukraine. But I'm trying to explain to the West that corruption kills, corruption starts wars. And this is corruption now, not in Ukraine, but it's corruption in the West. And accepting dirty money from Vladimir Putin is no more a rule. It has to be, it's part of the crime. And those sanctions which our Western partners are imposing, they are extraordinary. But it is extraordinary situation now in Ukraine. Millions of people are suffering.
And you're saying basically, Daria, you're saying it's too little, too late. You think it's too little, too late when it comes to those sanctions?
I'm saying yes. I'm saying that not just a couple of oligarchs have to be sanctioned, but at least 100 of Kremlin oligarchs with all their family members have to be sanctioned. All their assets have to be seized and confiscated. These oligarchs and their family members have to be kicked out of the Western states from NATO member states. And they have to be now sitting in Russia, but not somewhere in villas in French Riviera. This is what I'm saying.
Daria, I want to transition now to the refugee crisis. The UN says more than 1 million refugees have fled Ukraine. They think that number could reach 4 million. I think that number is going to be even higher, having reported on the situation over the last week here. What can the rest of the world do? What can the United States do to help out the refugee crisis?
The West has to help us to win the war. People are running from Ukraine, not because they don't like Ukraine, but because they are in fear, they are shocked. They want to return back home and to rebuild Ukraine. And what the West has to do is to do everything possible to intervene now and to protect us, to shield our sky from Russian missiles and help our army to defend our territory and our country. Ukrainians will not surrender. So what the West has to do now is to help us with planes, with more weapons, with air defense system, to help to shut Russian missiles, which are, they are throwing missiles to everywhere. It's now the ultimate risk for the West to interfere, for NATO to start doing something, but not relying on Ukrainian children to hit all these missiles on their shoulders.
We thank Daria for her time. Next, inside Russia tonight, despite worldwide condemnation and sanctions, no signs from Vladimir Putin that he will stop the invasion. The Russian president remaining defiant, and Russia's foreign minister telling our Keir Simmons questions about Putin's state of mind are, quote, Western propaganda. Keir Simmons again tonight for us.
Tonight, President Putin standing for a moment of silence for Russian soldiers killed in Ukraine. Later, calling them heroes and insisting most Ukrainians have been duped by Ukraine's government. Once again, his key advisors, ministers, military and intelligence chiefs at a distance, appearing via video link. And tonight, our reporting indicates senior members of the government were at times left out of the loop as President Putin prepared for war. Russia's foreign minister telling us today questions about the president's state of mind are Western lies.
President Putin is described by many in the West as erratic and isolated.
What and how Putin does and how he acts, you are judging on the basis of what Western propaganda is telling you.
Among the president's inner circle are his protection officers, members of an elite service with historical links to the KGB. Insiders tell us they would give their life for him. They even control the Russian president's nuclear black box.
Can you reassure the world that Russia would not fire a nuclear weapon in anger, would not fire a first strike?
We don't have insane people. We have our military doctrine.
Keir joins us now from Moscow. Keir, I was watching that Putin announcement on television here in Ukraine, and I was sort of shocked to hear him put a price tag on the lives of those soldiers. He announced to the country that he's going to pay out those families. How much exactly is Russia going to pay the families of the soldiers who have died in this war?
Well, Tom, he talked about the equivalent in dollars of $50,000 per life, per family. And another aspect of it that is kind of stunning, Tom, is that we've talked about how the plans for the war are changing as things develop on the ground. Well, the narrative changes too. So it's only days ago that the Kremlin wasn't talking about any casualties at all on the Russian side. Now you have the Russian president openly admitting on television that Russians are dying and making those offers of payment.
$50,000 for those lives, many of them young lives. It's truly unbelievable. On the topic of those deaths, on the soldiers, the Russian soldiers who are dying in this war, is the news and the media, and I know it's state-run over there, but are they covering this at all? Are the people of Russia aware of what's happening here?
Well, it is state-run, Tom, and we're learning just tonight of more opportunities for people to find out what's going on being closed down. So we reported a few days ago that there was disruption on the Facebook page. It now looks like Facebook is being closed down in Russia, other news organizations being closed down. So the Russian government trying to push people just to watch Russian state television because, of course, that's where the message that they want to send is.
Keir Simmons for us tonight again from Moscow. Keir, we thank you for that. With Ukrainians desperately fighting to defend their own country 1 week into the Russian invasion, I want to bring in Ambassador Bill Taylor. He's a friend of Top Story. He's also a former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine under President George W. Bush and again under President Trump. He's the current vice president for Russia and Europe at the U.S. Institute of Peace. So, Ambassador, earlier in the broadcast, I was reporting on the negotiations going on over the humanitarian corridors, right? These ceasefire zones that they may set up so they can get civilians out, but also bring medicine and food in. Should we take that as any sign that we could possibly be getting any closer to any type of peace process?
Tom, it's clearly a good sign that there are negotiations that are actually doing something, that are agreeing on something, and humanitarian corridors is a good first step. It's not clear, however, that there is anything beyond that. It's not clear that the Russian delegation, for example, is a serious one. Ukrainian delegation, led by the defense minister and one of the senior lieutenants under President Zelensky's servant of the people party, that's a serious delegation. They're ready to work. They're ready to negotiate. And an achievement on humanitarian corridors is a good step. Beyond that, there needs to be a ceasefire. There needs to be a general ceasefire. And that's what I'm sure the Ukrainian side is pushing for.
Ambassador, I know you don't know Putin personally, and I say that like you're not tight with him or close to him, but you have studied him. You've had to understand him as an ambassador to this country. What can you say about his behavior over the last few weeks, post-invasion, and then taken to the airwaves today and speaking with the Russian people, and also speaking to people like Macron and others, seemingly sounding like he is not going to stop here?
Tom, people whom I respect have analyzed President Putin much more closely than I have, and they are worried, several are worried, that he doesn't seem to be the same person that they had studied earlier. And President Macron is one of those. On the other hand, people tell me that he is not crazy. His calculations are different from ours in terms of how he evaluates costs and benefits. And from his standpoint, he may think that the benefits are worth the cost. It's crazy for us to think that that's the case. But one thing that we can count on in that analysis, Tom, is he's not going to commit suicide. He's not going to do this nuclear work, nuclear strikes that we've been worried about. So that's the one thing that these will agree on.
Ambassador, what do you think is going to happen with Belarus? The leader of that country obviously has a very close relationship with Vladimir Putin. Do you think Belarus joins this war? And if they do, does that force the hand of anyone else on the globe?
They are joining the fight, and they should be and have been sanctioned for joining the fight. There's no independent Belarus at this point. President Lukashenko is clearly under the control of President Putin. That's what President Putin would like to have in Ukraine, which he will never get. It's clear that President Zelensky will never be in the situation, put himself in the situation that President Lukashenko has done. The Ukrainians will stand for their independence and their sovereignty.
Ambassador Bill Taylor for us tonight. Ambassador, we thank you for your time. And I'll have much more from Ukraine later in the broadcast. But now we go to Gabe Gutierrez in New York with tonight's other big headlines. Gabe, good evening.
Tom, thanks so much. Still ahead on Top Story, the crime wave in New York City. Vicious attacks on subway passengers, even after the city launched a new program to try and stop them. The outrage after one suspect facing a slew of charges, including hate crimes, was released. Plus, part of a Florida highway shut down after a string of deadly crashes this morning, what officials say is likely the cause. And a former Louisville police officer found not guilty for his actions during a botched police raid that led to the death of Breonna Taylor. Their reactions tonight. Stay with us. We're back now with a verdict in the trial of the only criminal charges related to the raid that led to the death of Breonna Taylor. The ex-officer accused of endangering Taylor's neighbors found not guilty on all counts, but he wasn't even on trial for her death. Tonight, her family is responding. Ron Allen has the story.
We, the jury, found the defendant, Brett Hankison, not guilty of wanton endangerment in the first degree.
It took the jury just 3 hours and 10 minutes to find Brett Hankison not guilty of all charges. The former and fired Louisville police officer acquitted of 3 counts of wanton endangerment after firing his gun through an apartment window and patio door during a controversial police raid in March 2020 that left the occupant of the apartment, Breonna Taylor, dead.
This is not a case to decide who is responsible for the death of Breonna Taylor.
Throughout the trial, prosecutors and defense attorneys both tried to focus the jury's attention specifically on Hankison, who was not charged in connection with Taylor's death. Hankison's bullets went through Taylor's apartment and into the home of a couple and their young child.
By grace, they're still alive.
Prosecutors accused Hankison of firing blindly and recklessly, the couple testifying the bullets came dangerously close.
So this shot here, I believe, is the one that was inches away from hitting me, because I was eye level with this hole here.
But Hankison, who testified in his own defense, claimed he was trying to protect his fellow officers after Taylor's boyfriend fired at them, wounding one officer in the leg.
Immediately, Sergeant Mattingly goes down. I knew Sergeant Mattingly was down, and I knew they were trying to get to him.
Investigators testified only one shot was fired at the officers from a handgun, not a rifle. And neither Taylor nor her boyfriend were targets of the search warrant being executed that night. Still, Hankison's attorneys claimed he did nothing wrong that night. He is the only officer to face criminal charges in the case.
I would submit to you that a reasonable person would do exactly what Brett Hankison did if he sees his one brother officer being shot and perceives that his other brother officers are in the line of fire and being executed. He did what he had to do that day.
And Ron Allen joins Top Story now in studio. Ron, this has been a very emotional case, not just for the city of Louisville, but for many others across the country. So what's been the reaction to the not guilty verdict?
Hankison left the court quickly. He didn't say anything. He seemed relieved, as you might expect. His attorney said that he was glad that Hankison chose to testify on his own behalf. He thinks he convinced the jury that he was doing the best he could that night under very difficult circumstances. As you might expect, Taylor's family was angry. Her mother posted on social media saying that even though this case wasn't about Breonna Taylor, that Hankison should have been found guilty. And Louisville's mayor, in a statement, said, among other things, that he's working with the community and the police department to hopefully make sure that something like this never happens again.
Ron Allen joining us live here in studio. Ron, thanks so much. Now, back here in New York, crime in the city's subway system has surged in recent weeks. One woman brutally attacked with a hammer. Another video allegedly showing a man shoving feces in a woman's face in the Bronx. The surge comes despite Mayor Eric Adams sending 1,000 more officers and mental health professionals into the subways to fight the problem. Priscilla Thompson reports.
Tonight, major crimes on New York City transit up 30% this week, even after the mayor's subway safety plan went into effect.
I have seen a slight increase in the police presence.
Do you feel safer?
No.
I feel fine.
A little. The safety plan announced 2 weeks ago sent 1,000 more police officers and teams of health workers into the city subway system.
Public safety and justice, they are the prerequisite to prosperity.
While enforcement has gone up, with the NYPD reporting 64% more arrests since the week before, according to NBC New York, crime remains a problem. In Queens, a 57-year-old woman was viciously attacked with a hammer and robbed as she entered a subway station.
She told me she had been telling the perpetrator, stop, but apparently he just kept hitting her over the head and then ran off with the bag.
Police arrested 57-year-old William Blount days later on an attempted murder charge. We could not immediately reach Blount or his attorney for comment. And on the day the plan went into effect, a man smeared human feces in a 43-year-old woman's face at a Bronx subway station.
That's an horrific experience for anyone to go through. Human waste, and someone spitting in your face, those are real signs of mental health issues.
The alleged perpetrator, 37-year-old Frank Ibrokwa, now facing a slew of charges, including assault, according to court documents released on his own recognizance, prompting outrage. The Bronx District Attorney's Office telling NBC News they requested Ibrokwa be held on bail and supervised release, but the judge denied both. Ibrokwa is also facing hate crime charges for a prior incident in Brooklyn. He's on supervised release for that. His attorney had no comment without Ibrokwa's consent.
I do not understand why the MTA cannot ban people like that guy who had 3 priors. We take away driver's licenses for one drunk driving episode.
Overall, major crimes on transit so far this year are in line with 2016 to 2019 statistics, according to the NYPD, although ridership is still down significantly. Why are people like this being released?
As disgusting as this crime was, it didn't fall within any of the other categories of what that bail would be required.
Joseph Jackalone is a retired NYPD sergeant and professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. He says addressing crime on the trains begins above ground.
Just about every one of these cases has to deal with somebody who is homeless and has done something terrible. Historically, when I was a cop back in the day, the homeless people complained that the shelters weren't safe. Well, they need to fix that, and they needed to fix that yesterday.
And we thank Priscilla Thompson for that report. When we come back, the NBC News exclusive, Lester Holt sits down with former Attorney General William Barr. What he said about a call between former President Trump and the president of Ukraine leading up to the 2020 election. And the apartment explosion caught on camera, the urgent search for survivors tonight. Stay with us. Now to Top Stories news feed, and we begin with the deadly crash on a Florida highway. 5 separate crashes involving nearly 20 vehicles shut down a 20-mile stretch of I-95. At least 3 people killed and several more injured, including a young child who was airlifted to an Orlando hospital. Authorities believe dense fog and low visibility are to blame. Next, a search for survivors tonight after an explosion and fire destroyed an apartment building in Maryland. A home security camera capturing the blast at the building in Silver Springs. Intense flames and thick black smoke, then shooting through the roof. At least a dozen people were injured, 5 seriously. Some people are unaccounted for as well. Officials say residents reported smelling gas before the explosion. The cause is under investigation. Now, turning now to the major headline from Washington. The January 6th committee is arguing former President Trump broke the law while trying to overturn the 2020 election. In a new court filing, the committee says it has evidence suggesting Trump and his campaign, quote, engaged in a criminal conspiracy to defraud the United States. It comes during a dispute between the lawmakers and Trump-allied attorney John Eastman, who was refusing to turn over his emails. In a statement today, the former president slammed the panel and repeated his false election claims. Now to an NBC News exclusive interview with former President Trump's Attorney General Bill Barr. The explosive Oval Office meeting Barr had with Trump before tendering his resignation and his reaction to Trump's efforts to pressure Ukrainian President Zelensky to investigate Joe Biden in exchange for military aid.
This whole maneuver of trying to get the Ukrainians to investigate Biden, that was a harebrained scheme. It was ridiculous.
In that call, Trump offered up his attorney general to help facilitate the scheme. Barr says he had nothing to do with it.
And the president lumped you in with Rudy Giuliani as being the points of contact to make this happen.
I was livid.
4 weeks after the election, Barr's relationship with the president came to a head when he told a reporter there was no widespread election fraud, that Trump had simply lost. It led to a blow-up at the White House.
And I told him that all this stuff was bullshit and about election fraud. And, it was wrong to be shoveling it out the way his team was.
You're trying to set him straight.
Yes. And he listened. He was obviously getting very angry about this. I said, okay, well, look, I understand you're upset with me, and I'm perfectly happy to tender my resignation. And then, boom, he slapped the desk and he said, accepted, go home, you're done.
In a 3-page letter to NBC News, President Trump called Barr's book fake and repeatedly insulted his former AG as a coward, a big disappointment, and lazy. Trump also said that he was the one who demanded Barr's resignation.
You can watch more of Lester's conversation with former Attorney General Bill Barr tomorrow on Today and on a special hour this Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central on the mothership, NBC. We turn now to the police shooting of a 12-year-old boy in Philadelphia. Authorities say plainclothes officers shot the boy in the back, killing him after he fired at them. Police say he was with a teenager they thought was wanted for illegal gun possession. Tonight, the community is responding. Zincle Esamoah has that story.
Tonight, a 12-year-old boy fatally shot in the back by Philadelphia police, now identified as Thomas Daria, according to authorities who allege the boy fired at multiple officers on Tuesday night. This was the scene where the boy was shot, struck in the upper right area of his back, and pronounced dead at the hospital. The community in shock.
Being a father, it's just, it's not something that I could possibly imagine.
Joseph Perez says he has a 12-year-old who attends Dario's school.
Unfortunately, in today's society, children no longer can be children. They have to go from infants to adolescents instantaneously.
As for what happened, police say 4 plainclothes officers were investigating an illegal gun possession in South Philadelphia when the officer spotted a wanted 17-year-old teen related to their investigation. Police say the officers then approached the teen, who was accompanied by 12-year-old Daria, in their unmarked vehicle with police lights on.
I can tell you definitively that the police officer's vehicle had the red and blue lights indicative of police activity.
The 17-year-old's mother, who asked not to be shown on camera, disagrees.
They're saying the cop car turned their lights on. That never happened. So they didn't make themselves known as police officers. So the 2 kids assumed it was somebody from another neighborhood. So the 1 kid shot at the car.
Police say a bullet was fired by the 12-year-old and hit their car's back window near an officer's head.
1 officer sustained significant injury to his eyes from shattered glass.
Law enforcement add that 2 officers then pursued Daria on foot, fatally shooting him. 1 officer was treated at the hospital and released. No other officers were injured.
At this point, all indications are we believe he was still in possession of the weapon at the time of the officer's discharge.
Here's what's going to be very important, is to be able to capture as much video from the street as we can, witness statements, physical evidence, anything that we can reconstruct that entire shooting scene.
Video obtained by NBC affiliate WCAU shows the aftermath, where a 9mm semi-automatic handgun was recovered at the scene. Police say the firearm was stolen. The 17-year-old teen was stopped for questioning and released. The incident is now under investigation, and the 4 involved officers are on administrative leave.
Zincle Esamoah joins us now live. Zincle, it's hard to imagine how a 12-year-old got his hands on a gun. What are authorities saying about that?
That's right, Gabe. This was literally a child who is now dead. And so families and officials and educators are rightly shocked. The city's mayor, Democrat Jim Kenney, met with police and used the opportunity to actually speak about the need for new legislation around gun access. He said it's, quote, ridiculous how easily people can buy and sell guns in the city, and also said, quote, I don't know where these kids are getting the guns. So really, it was a moment of reckoning, and is a moment of reckoning for the city and those who care for the children in it, Gabe.
Zincle, thanks so much. Now to Top Stories Global Watch. And a massive fire has destroyed a historic building used in hit TV shows Peaky Blinders and Downton Abbey. New video shows the flames ripping through a factory in England. No injuries were reported. The factory was built in 1869 and closed in the 1990s, but has been used for many movies and TV shows. The cause of the fire is under investigation.
We are back now with this special edition of Top Story, reporting from Ukraine. These images are from the war. People ripped from their homes, now looking for hope in neighboring countries. A woman wiping the tears of a child in Poland. Refugees struggling to stay warm in Romania. It is so cold here. And a boy resting on his luggage in Slovakia. Moments in time for the more than 1 million refugees who have escaped the invasion. And tonight, Latin American countries are stepping in to rescue their countrymen and women from the devastation. Our Isa Gutierrez has their stories.
Tonight, a Mexican Air Force plane carrying dozens of Mexican nationals and their families who lived in Ukraine headed one way to Mexico City.
Estar en un resguardo de bombas todos los días, pues es difícil estar escuchando las bombas, los disparos en la ciudad.
University student Guillermo Padilla boarding the plane in Romania with at least 80 others who, like him, crossed the border out of Ukraine earlier this week. They're part of a group of Mexican nationals that the Mexican government says they'll bring over 6,000 miles back home. The country's Secretary of Foreign Affairs tweeting Thursday morning about the operation. But for most Mexican refugees, Ukraine had become a new home.
Esta es la bandera del país que me ha dado todo por 10 años.
Before the war broke out last week, over 200 Mexicans were living in Ukraine. And while some gratefully look forward to new beginnings,
I want to see Mexico.
Others, like Larissa Garcia, who's been living in Ukraine for 27 years, say they won't be going back to Mexico.
Es una invasión.
Latin American countries like Peru, Brazil, and Argentina also working to get hundreds of their nationals to safety.
Aqui, brasileiros, estamos bem, eles seguem para Polônia, para Romênia.
They bring with them the few belongings they could carry, and memories of war they say they'll never forget.
Retumba todo, las ventanas, las casas, piensas que están cerca de ti.
Mis estudiantes están en búnkeres ahora. Mis mejores amigas están en búnkeres ahora.
Isa Gutierrez, NBC News.
And when we come back, a mother's strength. The Ukrainians doing everything to protect their children, others becoming parents in the midst of war. They're inspiring courage and messages for peace. Next. Top Story is back reporting from Ukraine. Those bells ringing at Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris for 7 straight minutes today in honor of the 7 days Ukraine has stood up to the Russian invasion, and thousands taking to the streets of Hamburg, Germany in a stunning show of solidarity with Ukraine. The support truly flooding in from all over the globe, so many watching in horror as this crisis stretches on. But amid the darkness of war, the strength of the Ukrainian people shining brightly, the light of the mothers of Ukraine shining brightest of all.
Day after day, Ukrainians teaching the world about patriotism. Everyday citizens stepping up to defend their homeland and shocking the globe with their resolve. And in many cases, those putting up the fiercest fight are the mothers, doing whatever it takes to protect their children. At this shelter in Lviv, we met Tanya Lushikova with her son Elsie, just 5 months old.
How hard is it to travel with a baby?
She tells us that moms left to carry their kids to safety seem to become the strongest creatures of them all. Tanya, like so many refugees we've met, worries about the psychological toll this war will take on its youngest victims. In shelters across the city, mothers doing whatever they can to shield their little ones from the horrors that surround them. This mother stroking her daughter's hair as they lay together on a threadbare mattress. Another with her 2 young sons huddled around a kitchen table for a family dinner during a war. And many women becoming mothers for the first time in a country torn apart by Russia's attack.
I had my son. His name is Mark.
Yula admitted to a hospital in Kyiv the same day the Russian invasion began. Her healthy baby boy, Mark, born in a hospital basement just 5 days later. Amid the tragedy and death, his life a symbol of hope. And for soon-to-be moms like Elena,
I shouldn't be stressed now, so I'm trying to cool myself down. But of course it's terrible what is happening. We are living in real hell.
That motherly strength and the hope it can bring already on display.
Hopefully this one will see peace.
And we hope Elena is right and that her child will indeed see peace. Thank you so much for watching Top Story tonight. I'm Tom Llamas reporting from Ukraine. Stay right there. More news now on the way.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.